Here's my bottom 5, top 5. Let's get into this.
Steve loves this topic. At least Steve loves this is Talk That Talk Tuesday with Steve Kim and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Gems. Let's go.
All right. So the top. Got to go with the Rutgers. And I don't want to focus on the same teams or people every week. That gets repetitive. Rutgers is 3-0. I know they've been 3-0 before, but I think this is a better version of 3-0. They pretty much handled or controlled most of that game against Va-Tech with Monongai. And I've got to give Greg Schiano credit. This is a guy, he's not a great pro coach. I thought he was a misplaced guy. But I've always said, if he would have taken over for Butch Davis at Miami instead of Larry Coker, the substitute teacher, Miami would have won multiple national titles. And you know why? Because he's a bit of an asshole. You want to run a good college program that's going to win a lot, don't get a nice guy. Got to have a coach with an edge. Schiano has an edge. They play Washington this Friday. The game's at Rutgers. They win that, and all of a sudden Rutgers is headed for a pretty damn good season. But shout out to Rutgers. They've done a few things. They've settled the program again. And Greg Schiano, in his second run at Rutgers, is recreating that magic. So shout out to them. The other guy that I want to focus in on, Caleb Johnson. Here's a guy averaging over 8 yards a carry for Iowa. Now, Iowa is a team that has no offensive weapons outside. They're probably loading and stacking that box against that air raid that they don't have. And he dominated that game against Minnesota on the road. Caleb Johnson is putting himself on NFL radars. He's an elite premier running back. And again, this is a guy that's getting no help outside. And I guarantee you teams are probably stacking that box like crazy. Number 3.
White? Is he a white running back?
No. Caleb with the K.
Caleb.
Yeah.
But it's with the K, Smitty. It's with a K. That's the reason I was going to ask. I had to ask. Hey, Steve, to ask if an Iowa player is white is really not out of the realm.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you asked that if it's a cornerback. That's kind of like their thing. They still have black running backs over their coach. Now, the other thing is, number 3, Cam Ward. Cam Ward.
Of course.
Right now, he is the Heisman front runner. I'm sick of hearing about these Colorado guys. When they start losing games, they're not going to get any votes. Cam Ward is a galvanizing, impactful, generational player. Maybe the most important recruit Mario Cristobal has ever had. He is the glue. He's the straw that stirs the drink. Even when Miami was scuffling with UCF or USF on Saturday, I said, don't worry about it. The pilot to Air Cristobal has got this. By the way, he actually threw a cover 2 hole shot down the middle to Sam Brown. It was a thing of beauty. Yeah,
cover 2?
Yeah, cover 2. Imagine that. Also, I got to give credit. I was vacillating here.
Uh-oh.
Do I put Michigan in the top 5 or USC in the bottom 5? You know what? I'm going to give the Wolverines the credit. Hail to the victors, champions of the West. They ran the ball. They were tough. They came out with the plays when they needed to. But I've got to say this about USC. How do you allow a team that had 32 yards passing, had no threat of the throw game, and then they had maybe I should have put Lincoln Riley in the bottom 5, though. The way he handled the last 5 minutes of that game, not running the ball more than once on that second-to-last offensive drive, and then on that play where Khalil Mullings busted that 63-yarder, which swung the whole game, Kamari Ramsey, you want to be an NFL safety, you got to make that tackle. That was a lazy effort. I'll just say, you watch that play again. It was a 9-yard gain. He came in from the side as a safety. Kamari olayed it. That was a terrible effort. If you watch that again, number 7 for USC, I rewound that thing 5 times last night. Said, that's the guy not putting his body on the line. Hey. Ronnie Lott, Joey Browner would not approve.
I saw
Dennis Smith would not approve.
Baylor did the same thing against Colorado.
I mean, Kamari, that should be a 9-yard gain, and you made it into a 63-yard gain. That's a poor effort. And if I'm an NFL scout, I would have like a red flag, because if that's the effort you're going to give in that situation of the game, nah. Then Illinois. I will give the Illini credit. I did not think Luke Altmaier could go in as the starting quarterback at the Lincoln Memorial Stadium and beat a team that seems to be on the uprise. You know what? They outplayed them. They really did outplay him, and you got to give Brett Bielema credit. Didn't work out for him at Arkansas, but he's done a pretty good job of steadying that program in Champaign. and they are now 4-0, and I think they're going to make some noise. They're a very, very tough team. Defensively, they're pretty good. And again, they beat a Kansas team that's been disappointing and a Nebraska team that has momentum. So that's my top 5. Bottom 5.
Bottom of the barrel.
NC State. It's not that you're losing, because you're losing to good teams. You're getting blown out. And for Dave Dorn's defense to get gashed and mauled and mollywopped the way they are, I do not expect that from that program. And now they have a situation at quarterback. C.J. Bailey has a little bit of a future, even though you hate that low release coach. I think he has a liver arm than Grayson McCall. If they lose a couple of more games, I start going with the future, because C.J. Bailey is the future. But
let me ask you guys, not to cut you off before you get to UNC game. Is Clemson back?
I think they're – I never gave up on them, Coach. And the biggest difference they're doing is they're allowing Cade Klubnik to throw on first down. That game plan versus Georgia, I'd be ashamed of. All you were doing is run, oh shit, 3rd and long. Yeah, well, Coach, that's because you're going up against Georgia. You're not going to establish the run. You establish the run against Georgia, all you're doing is setting up 3rd and long. Starting with the App State game, they made a decision. We will let Cade Klubnik go vertical on early downs. And look, they have some young receivers that were very highly recruited that you have to let play, like Bryant Wesco. And Phil Maffa can steady you in the ground game. He can keep you ahead of the chains. But Klubnik is playing with a certain confidence he did not have at any point last year. And they're finally it looks more or less like a Garrett Riley offense finally. Let's just put it that way.
It looks like they got more than just white boys out there on that field, Steve.
They finally have some twitch. Anyway, UNC. The UNC defense. I'm just going to say this. Carter ain't walking through that door. Marvin Austin ain't walking through that door. Quinn Sturdivant ain't walking through that door. Dre Bly ain't walking through that door. And Julius Pepper and Lawrence Taylor, they're really not walking through that door. They hung a 70 spot on you. You almost had Mac Brown retiring. And then he said, no, forget it. I need a paycheck. Bad. At home, James Madison, Alonzo Barnett's a quarterback. They could have actually scored 80. They blew some opportunities late in the first half to actually score more points than they did. UNC may have found a quarterback, though, because they actually moved the ball fairly well. You're not going to win a lot of games giving up 70, home or away. Now, the other team I want to spotlight, Dave Aranda, Baylor. Your team actually played a good game. Dave, you are a defensive specialist. That last sequence of plays, the way you handled it, is a clinic on how not to defend a Hail Mary. Honestly. I don't know why defensive backs, well, there are taught, Coach, but you got to guard the goal line. That's where the fence has to start. You don't guard the back of the end zone. And look, if you cannot, and then also the way they align defensively, I don't understand why you just don't have 2 wide ends and a guy up the middle. They did this thing where they overloaded on one side, and I'm thinking that's a strange-looking play.
They never pulled him up. They should have pulled him up on the edge.
Yeah, I'm just – look, to me, the way that they were aligned and then the way they covered on the back end, it was an exhibition on how a coach on the hot seat might lose his job. Number 4, this is really about the coach, not the team. Auburn has a quarterback problem. They don't have one. They have an older guy in Peyton Thorne that's very limited and a guy in Hank Brown that's not ready to play. But Hugh Freeze's behavior on the sideline, I've never seen a coach melt down like that. And Hugh, you're the offensive guy. You're blaming and bitching at everybody. And now your old quarterback from Ole Miss, Bo Wallace, had some very revealing tweets. Bo Wallace.
JUCO, that JUCO guy, yeah.
Yeah, and Bo Wallace flat out said, man, I gave up a piece of my body for you, and you're just a selfish son of a you-know-what. I'm like, wow, that was interesting. So Hugh Freeze has an issue. They're giving him a lot of money at Auburn, a lot of NIL collective money, and they're recruiting all over the place. You better find a quarterback.
Hey, shout out Charles Arbuckle in the chat. Good friend of mine, legendary.
Number 1 tight end in 1985 out of Houston, Texas, I believe.
Yep. Hey, Charles, happy birthday to you, brother. Belated. I know it was the other day. Hey, he's right, Steve, right here. Chiz is at home drinking his coffee, probably turning over and saying,
wasn't me.
I went to a natty.
By the way, Charles Arbuckle, I'll never forget, in 1988, I went to the UCLA-Nebraska game, and it was UCLA went up 28-0 in like 10 minutes. And Troy Aikman threw a little route to Charles Arbuckle right in the middle of the field, and Arbuckle just turned around and raced like 70 yards. I've never seen a guy that big move that fast. Anyway, shout out to you, Charles Arbuckle.
Charles Arbuckle reminded you of John Mackey a little bit, I thought.
He was a really good, highly recruited. That's when UCLA used to care about football. They don't seem to anymore. But, Hugh Freeze, Hugh, you are a coach. You're the leader. You're the one who makes the most amount of money. When you point the finger, 3 of them come right back at you. You got to start pulling the thumb. You are losing that locker room with the way you are behaving on the sideline and some of the statements that you are making. That's the reality. Act like a leader. And finally, this is a program that I respect. I think they're going to be okay. Kansas State, they were playing a good, solid game for about 27 minutes of the first half. I think they were up 6-0. And then they completely imploded the next 12 to 15 minutes against the Stormin' Mormons of BYU, and they were down 31-6 in a flash. Avery Johnson is a quarterback that I like, but Coach, right now, he needs to learn he needs to operate inside the pocket, because that offense does not look great unless he's scrambling. And I'm not a big fan of that offense. Avery Johnson needs to make the routine throw at a higher level than he is right now for this team to really make a run. So that is it. The bottom 5, top 5.